Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Let's see. So because my viewers have the attention span of a gnat, they're probably not going to listen for more than 5 minutes. So I'll let you tell us about your channel and what you're doing and any kind of intro you want to do.
Oh, sure.
And how they can subscribe to you, which we'll put. Well, it's in the description. You got a lot of stuff in the description. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the description. Yeah, how to get a hold of me, how to learn street epistemology, a lot of good information in there. Yeah, Sound Epistemology, it's my channel. It's named that after the Puget Sound region from which I'm based out of. It's the body of water near Seattle. Started learning about street epistemology around 2016 during the 2016 election. A couple years after that, started practicing it online and just learning more about it. Then a couple years after that, started my own channel and going out and doing live one-on-one SE conversations in my neighborhood. And then a couple of years after that, started meeting up with folks who want to go out and do it in their own community. So currently I'm just traveling around the United States, meeting up with folks who find value in doing this and want to try it in their neck of the woods. Sometimes if they don't have the gear or the confidence to go out and do it on their own, I provide that and basically just facilitate it and bring down barriers that are keeping them from doing it on their own. So it's been really fun.
Cool. Okay. The good fight. Basically, it's kind of like evangelism, except you're evangelizing rational thinking or reasoning rather than any particular religion.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
Street epistemology is basically a civil way to create reflection on someone's reasoning process. And so we basically have them choose a belief or a conclusion or an assertion that they have that they want to explore the reasoning that supports this level of certainty that they have in it being true. Yeah. And they get to pick whatever they want to pick. So they can talk about something religious, a social topic, politics. We can even talk about what truth means and what is the criteria that requires them to think of something to being true or accurate, and basically just explore their map of reality and how accurate they want it to be. But there's like tons of little thought experiments that we use, ways of getting them to pick a topic, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's very meaningful and valuable, I think, especially now.
Yeah. Okay. So the setup is, I'm in the middle of a 100-mile marathon, and I'm in a park, and you just come up to me, and I'm your victim. And and what I talk about, like I couldn't run a 100-foot marathon right now.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I don't know if that would be the right conditions for a serious SE conversation because of how tired you might be. Because there are considerations to take. When is a good time to do it? When is not? You know, the environment has to be a certain way. But yeah, if they're too tired, or if they're kind of angry, or if they're hungry, you know, it might be better to choose a different time to do. And that goes for the practitioner too. If the practitioner is hungry or kind of irritated, it might not be the best conditions to have these kind of deep discussions.
I'm just trying to set up a low bar for where my brain is and how well my brain is working. So I'm in the middle of a 100-mile marathon in my mind. So that's
yeah. So if you were to want to participate, or if you were interested, of course, you know, sometimes and everybody does this a little bit differently. Like some people have different goals as to why they want to have these conversations with people. And so this, what I describe would probably be my version of it, or my expression of doing street epistemology. But if you were to want to participate, I would have you choose a conclusion that you want to explore the reasoning that supports it. And that's basically what I want to talk about. I'm not that interested in the claim itself or
Yeah.
the reasons themselves, but why you're convinced those reasons are a good explanation for the conclusion that you think is accurate to our shared world, our shared reality. And so
Okay.
some people just like to focus on the what and or how it makes people feel, which is fine. But I try to go a little bit deeper than the what and the why, and explore the quality of the reasons that support their certainty in the conclusion being true.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and I want to know if I'm full of shit or not. Basically, that's my goal.
That's a great
So,
place to be. I'm not sure.
yeah.
I'm not sure that's 100% with everyone. So I
Okay.
commend you for that.
Yeah, we'll see. So my claim is that I believe most multicellular life evolved from a population of single-celled organisms. So I believe in evolution from single cell to multi-celled, all the way up to all the animals and diversity in plants and fungus, and that we see today.
Okay.
That's my belief.
All right. Typically we would, and you and I've talked a couple of times, so we've built at least some rapport. That's a really important part of street epistemology, building and maintaining rapport. And sometimes that takes a little bit more than other times, especially if you're speaking with strangers that you never met. You may not want to dive, right into the claim there, but just wanted to make sure people understood that there is some building of rapport that should be happening at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it sounded like you put your definition of evolution within the claim almost, right? So like definitions
Yeah.
are really important so that we're both understanding, we're using the same terms in the same way. And so your basic claim is evolution is, maybe I can rephrase it and you tell me if there's anything wrong with
Okay. Go ahead.
with
Yeah.
the way I phrase it.
Yeah.
Evolution is the best explanation for the diversity of life, or would you make it simpler than that? Like, I believe evolution is true. Like, how could we make it a little bit more concise?
I believe that's what really happened.
Okay.
That there was nothing but single-celled organisms floating around in the ocean, and from that, all the diversity of life that we see today evolved. That it actually evolved from those basics. So,
Okay.
is that
So
yeah,
evolution really happened?
really happened?
Would
Yeah.
would that be a good way to phrase the claim?
Well, don't want to forget that it's still really happening, but evolution is why we have the diversity of life that we have today on the earth.
Okay. Evolution
Why we
explains.
have, yeah, complicated life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Evolution explains the diversity of life.
Yep.
Okay. And so getting kind of more clarity here, can you just give us kind of a concise definition for your understanding of evolution?
Definition from my understanding. Boy, that's a tough one. Because there's the whole thing about change in alleles in a population over time, but I don't really care for that. That doesn't quite cover it.
You can just keep it basic for us.
Yeah, that it heads in a direction of complexity. Basically, that single cells are obviously not as complex as multicellular organisms, and that it tends to keep going and changing and changing and changing on every generation. And there is what they call, and I hate the word macroevolution, meaning that there was, like at the base of a dog and a cat, there were some other organism, that we're not too sure what it looked like, that basically evolved into both of those two lines separately. So
okay.
Those were, is that, I hate to, I get pretty deep in the weeds on this stuff. And coming up with pat definitions is something that I don't actually care for.
So, do you find it useful to have like a simple explanation for a word that you're using, especially when you're using it, in with different audiences? Like, and this is not to like, it's just something that popped in my head. Like, there's this saying about, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't really understand it that well. And I'm not saying that this is the case with you, but right. I guess what I'm asking is, do you find value in that kind of mindset, or is it really important to you to be very accurate and precise, which means you have to use maybe more words than normal? Or maybe you can help me with that part.
Yeah, the difference between a pat definition of a word or a process and the whole story, right? Mm-hmm. So I tend to lean to the whole story, but I think I can explain each part of that story in some detail that even a 5-year-old can understand. But as far as telling a 5-year-old what evolution is, God, how would I do that? It's like all of this stuff is kind of related.
Mm-hmm. We're all kind of related.
Kind of related, yeah, but not in the way that we normally think of relatives, because in that way you're not my relative, right? We don't think so anyway. Mm-hmm. So we're all interconnected in some way, going way back into our ancestry, right? That there's connections all the way back. And so
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it about evolution that interests you? Like, is this like a topic that you're really passionate about, or what drives your wanting to explore this?
Okay, passion. I get up every morning at like 5:00, and this is what I do. I study the intricacies of molecular biology and how it happens. And but the odd thing is that for a lot of how things happen, I don't know, and I have sort of that sounds kind of crazy sort of skepticism, right, when I start. So I don't know.
So this is like a big deal to you, like a daily.
Very big deal. Yeah, it's the focus of my life for the last 20 some years, since I turned 60, I think. So,
how do you suppose your passion about it, if we want to call it that, how do you suppose that affects your relationship with its truth, with its accuracy? Yeah. Like,
I know what you're doing.
what tell me about it. I like to know.
Okay.
I'm curious about where this is right now. Can you talk to me about how you're feeling right now?
Yeah, my whole spirituality, my religion is evolution. So, and complexity, right, in the universe and having it happen naturally. So, yeah, I am very, very invested in this being true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very biased as to, because if it weren't true, if it was that crazy magic thing, created all at once, I would be so bored with this life and so done with it. It just wouldn't have any meaning to me if this were not true, I think.
What do you mean by that? You're saying your life's meaning would go away if you found out evolution wasn't true?
I wouldn't go quite that far, but it would just seem like when you're watching the series and then all of a sudden you get the plot and the plot is just stupid and simple and it's unappealing. It would take some of the energy out of doing the plot. So it would seem just mundane to me if it were all magically created to be just so. Magic, I think, is real boring.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Like,
yeah,
could you find meaning in the magic as much as you could find meaning in the evolution being the explanation for stuff?
I couldn't find meaning in the magic. No, I'd probably find it in donuts or maybe crack. I don't know. I'd look elsewhere.
Would it require magic for evolution to be false? Does evolution being false equal magic is necessary?
Yeah. I can't think of any other alternative other than it happened naturally. I mean, even if it was aliens that guided it and implanted the stuff in the ocean, it would still have to be evolution, even if it was aliens, because if they, backed up a truck and dumped a bunch of eukaryotic cells in the ocean, well, we'd still have to get from there to all the species we have today. So it would still be evolution. I can't think of any other alternative than some sort of magical, it all happened at once. I guess you could imagine that maybe a universe was tumbling around and it just fell out of the tumbler and this is what we got. It was a roll of the dice, right? And this is just how it happened to be. So I can't imagine an alternative. And I think that's part of the reason why I have always in the background believed in evolution, even before I knew anything about how it might work. Mm-hmm. So, I would have picked that. And it was like, I just don't know what the alternative is. And
okay.
Yeah.
So not having an alternative, would you say that's one of the reasons why you think it's that evolution is accurate? Or
that's what drove me 20 some years ago when I started. Yeah, that's what drove me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
So if somebody did somehow come up with another alternative, what would that mean?
Back then, it would have. I probably would have rejected it because I was kind of an asshole back then. But but back then it might have made a difference. But today I've gone a lot further, and I'd have trouble believing it unless they had some kind of proof for it. But I would be damn curious to hear what it is. I would love to.
You mentioned aliens.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can come up with an explanation using aliens.
Yeah.
That would be an alternative. Like there's this idea of
simulation.
Simulation. Okay. Yeah. So
yeah.
What would be an alternative explanation for evolution using simulation and maybe aliens?
Yeah, there was some kind of physicality that we can't even imagine out there, and in that physicality, there was some kind of an intelligence or something like our intelligence, and it basically decided, oh, I want to create this little race of humans and play with it, right? So I'm gonna create carbon chemistry first, and I'm gonna create quantum mechanics, and I'm going to do all these things in simulators. So and that would be pretty far-fetched, and that would be a definition for a God that we could not understand at all, yet it was intelligent. But I just think the chances,
one that like hides bones and stuff.
Yeah, right. I think the chances of that kind of intelligence are just too ridiculous, because it's like, I always look to the humility that we're this little bit of goo with a brain that functions in a certain way, and we're on a little tiny piece of dust in the middle of this huge galaxy, right? It's just unlikely that our kind of intelligence would be at the very core of existence itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So an alternative that you came up with was that aliens creating simulations that we can't understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What process did you use to rule that out?
To rule that out, that there is no process that could rule that out, basically, because everything we are is limited to that subset, right? To that world, this kind of a world with carbon and chemistry and brains and thinking neurons. So there wouldn't be any way that our epistemology could get outside of it. And the interesting thing is that's kind of what I think physics is, right? Except I think, like, the real thing that we're going to find out about the greater physics that explains the Big Bang and the universe is that it is something so crazy and weird new geometry that we can't even get our minds around it. So I kind of believe that that's the case anyway. The difference is I don't believe that there was a human-like intelligence that did the work. I think that's absolutely ridiculous and impossible.
Like a consciousness type thing?
Like a consciousness or something that, is sitting here thinking, oh, I think I'm going to do this. There's nothing like that. I think I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Right. It's a human thing. It's an animal thing, right?
A contemplator.
Yeah, contemplator. Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that we cannot rule out that explanation. We just have no way of using it as an explanation, or
well, it doesn't provide us with anything at all.
okay.
It doesn't. Yeah, it gets us outside of our local concern. So it's almost like we'd be trying to figure something out that we're not in any way designed to figure out. It'd be beyond our epistemology, beyond our abilities, whatever.
So the idea that the evolution explanation can be understood by humans makes it more likely to be the case than the alien simulation explanation?
Like I say, maybe 24 years ago, but now I have a much stronger belief in it because of what I've studied. So anyway, yeah.
So what's supporting it also is the studies that you've done between 24 years ago and now. Okay. Do you have like an example of something that you're studying provided that got you to closer to where you are today about it?
It's Are you ready for this?
You don't have to go.
Are you ready for this?
You don't have to go. You can give me the 5-year-old explanation again. If you,
I'm not sure if I can without drawing. I don't know if I can do it without a drawing very concisely, but I did it for a friend just a few days ago. So basically, you have genes in your DNA, and the genes amount to about 1.5% of your DNA, and they create proteins, right? Okay. Now, each of these genes, if you were to draw a line of the gene, they consist of something called exons and introns. I don't know if you want to go this deep, but let me know. Okay. So they have parts of the gene that actually do encode protein, and they're little tiny spikes. And then they have a big long area called an intron that does not code for genes at all. In fact, it's cut out and thrown away. And then the parts that matter are, glued together in a line, and that becomes the messenger RNA that ends up creating a protein. So we're taking a gene, say about 29,000 nucleotides, and we're taking 1,500 nucleotides out of it and saving those. And so we have all this garbage that's laying on the cutting room floor, right? Now, if we take that garbage, the introns only, the non-functional part of the DNA, and we start to compare our intron to chimpanzees, we'll find that they're very similar, not identical, but very similar. And if I took some of those and compared them to you, I would find differences, more differences than those than I would in the proteins, right? So we'd find these odd little, I call them bullet holes. So there'd be a few bullet holes between us, between me and you. There'd be 10 bullet holes between me and the chimpanzee. But if we go back to the mouse, there's 500 bullet holes. And if we go back to crustaceans, there's 2,000 bullet holes, right? Or the introns are very, very different. And if we lay all of this out, we end up with this phylogenetic tree that kind of looks like the tree of life that we put together based on our shape and form and what kind of thing we are. So I find that the non-functional, non-conserved parts of DNA spell out a story that we are related, that you can see. We know how many mutations happen over time, and we're seeing in these areas that don't matter, we're seeing just bang, bang, bang. It's just like a clock, a molecular clock. And we see that pattern over and over again. And now if I take one gene and look at that pattern and draw that tree, now I take a totally different gene. It shouldn't matter if it was created. If I took a totally different gene, it should have just, been random chance, right? But no. It ends up being the same phylogenetic tree of life again, and it keeps confirming itself over and over. So no matter, and I do this, and I go out to the NCBI and I download the actual sequences, and I do these comparisons, and I look at it, and I understand these jumping viruses, and I've seen a few of those as being one of the bullet holes, and all of that just completely locks it in to making so much sense that I believe it historically happened that way. So
okay. So
did I explain it well?
Yeah, I thought you did very well explaining it. I'm interested in why that explanation is an important one for you, that caused you to go from where you were 24 years ago to now. Like what, or we can talk generally speaking, studying, could somebody studying something come to something false about what they're studying? Like why is studying a good reason to support this conclusion?
Yeah. Oh, well, it's kind of like that particular thing I told you about is like finding bear tracks in the woods, and you don't see the bear, but you see the bear's tracks, right? And the tracks kind of tell you that the bear was there.
You see
So
evidence of phenomenon.
you see evidence of ancestry, basically, that, the mouse, that we have some relationship to the mouse. But I mean, that's only one line of evidence that I bring in. There's more. And they also very much play in each other. Like the other thing that I really had a problem with it, like when people say, oh, you just believe in evolution, I don't know if believe is the right word, because when I start thinking about how did a liver evolve from a thing without a liver to, this fully functioning big alcoholic liver that I have, I don't believe that right away, because I want to know how that happened. I want to know what the steps are, right? And that gets into embryology, and that gets into, all of that stuff. So anyway, there's more than one line of evidence, and they line up and they all say, hey, ancestry.
Mm-hmm.
So
could you be more? Could your level of certainty in in evolution being the explanation for the diversity of life to go up? Like,
yes.
is there? Okay. Do you have an example of something that would cause your level of certainty to go up in that being?
If I knew more
accurate?
about how sexual reproduction got started and happened, if I knew more of the details, I mean, I understand the liver, I understand the heart, I understand a whole bunch of other things, but there's always something I don't understand, and every new thing I understand does increase it a little. I'm already at 99.9, so we're talking about 99.9.1 and 99.9.2. So,
Okay.
but everything, there are some questions like, like how did sexual reproduction start, and how did the first multicellular animals start to develop diverse organs within them and stuff. And I know a little bit more about that. That's one of the things that I'm currently working on. So
Okay.
there's always more, to get me more adamantly certain that, we are related to frogs, and mice and stuff like that.
Do you think you could ever get to a point where you would be closed-minded about it? Like,
no,
not open to being wrong? Like, are you open to being wrong about this now?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess and I don't know what I guess if we found something that told us that, like, there absolutely wasn't enough time for this to happen, if we could prove that with mathematics very precisely. And I know creationists think they've done this, but they're full of shit. They haven't. If we could come up and do it precisely, you can't do it on the back of the envelope with a probability for a protein evolution, right? Like, oh, the protein is 100 amino acids long, so it's 20 to the 100th possibility of creating that amino acid by magic. It didn't get created by magic. So anyway, so if we could come up with a mathematical system based on what we know about complexity, and we know a ton about complexity these days, that proved that this was impossible, then I would say, okay, we got to look for something else. And I don't know what the hell that would be.
Okay.
So, sure as hell wouldn't be God.
That kind of tells me a little bit, like, if you because it sounds like you're describing a way to tell if you're wrong about it, and that would be the math. If the math was wrong, if the math didn't add up, and it sounded like you said if that was shown to you, you wouldn't necessarily abandon evolution being the best explanation. You would keep looking for something that would
else.
help that make sense.
Something more guided, yeah. Or I would be looking for what's wrong with the math that they showed me, right?
Okay. So you wouldn't be open to, if the math is wrong, therefore evolution is false.
I'm not sure what you mean. Okay, if the math is wrong.
Yeah. Would you? Okay. It sounds like you're saying if the math didn't explain it, then evolution being false would still not be an option for you. Would you say that?
No, not with what I know right now. No, I'd have to have an explanation that explained why those introns look that way, right? That made sense. And if we come up with that, like a good story about why they look that way, other than big man beast in the sky created it that way, because I mean, or brain in a vat. I mean, you can make up a number of stories that
we
could
talked about
account
the
for
alien simulation,
right? Yeah,
which we can't rule out. You said,
yeah,
right?
and I just wouldn't look to that unless I had some third way to tell me that may be the case. Like brain in a vat, we'd have to see a crack in reality to realize that, oh, wait a minute, you know, like in the Matrix when the program starts to go to hell and all of a sudden you kind of see through it, right? If something like that happened, of course, I take a lot of mushrooms and that happens every time I do.
You said that's great. You said that there's lots of explanations that we can come up with that we cannot rule out to explain diversity.
Yeah, like to give you an example, you know, we could be like, I could be a brain in a vat and I'm being fed this entire reality by a supercomputer and by a mad scientist, right, who looks like humans, and he could have a green corduroy shirt on or a flannel shirt, or he could have a red flannel shirt. That would be two explanations, right? Yeah. And or it could be a lady. Well, there's another explanation. I mean, we could go on all day, and besides brain in a vat, we could invent a whole lot of other stories about it, you know.
Okay.
But if for any of those stories, so anyway, we can come up with an infinite number of stories to just so explain something, right?
That we cannot rule out.
What is the probability anyone being right? It's 1 over infinity, which is 0.
Okay.
Anyway.
All right. So I think you brought up first where you're at kind of on a certainty scale, which is and it sounded like you said 99.9 or just 99.
99.9, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And it's funny because I've
gone up.
I made sure that I was trying to see if how far I could go without introducing the scale, and you brought it in, so that I think that's interesting. It sounds like you're at 99.9 certain in something that we have a lot of explanations that we could come up with that we could not rule out.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. And sounds like you're fine with that. You're fine with 99.9% certainty in an explanation that we could come up with lots of explanations that we cannot rule out.
Right.
Okay.
But those explanations are all too human. They're just so, you know, and that's why I don't give them a lot of weight. Okay, because I mean, if we come up with an explanation that was just way out there, mind-blowing Netflix sci-fi theories, like what was that one, Right Here, Right Now, everything, I don't know. Anyway,
everything all at once.
Everything
all the time, all at once.
Yeah, if we could come up with something like that was a possibility, then I might slide down a little bit to 99.01 or something, or 99.7 or something.
You would shift.
Yeah, I could shift. Yeah.
You could shift.
Yeah, if there was something out there that was just better, you know, that appealed. You know, and that's kind of like a personal taste, sort of, isn't it? You know, that I have a taste for this complexity and naturalism And I admitted that up front, that this is the most tasteful way that I would like the world to be.
I think you called it a bias, and like
A bias,
you've put a lot of energy and you've invested a lot of time and effort in studying this, and which I guess I'd want to know, and I don't know how much longer you want to go. We can stop whenever you want, but I guess a question I would ask is, like, hypothetically, if you found out that one of these other explanations was actually the correct one, how your like day-to-day life would change. Like, if you found out last night that the alien simulation was the correct one, and or brain in a vat type of thing, what would you have done differently today? That
I would have woke up and I would have studied literature, or I would have read science fiction, or I would start reading fiction again, which I haven't read for years. I would start reading fiction again.
Why fiction?
And because it's more human. Like, I get more into human stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Human things that humans do. I don't do a lot of stuff that humans do, but I get more into that. I would take more mushrooms. I would maybe do more meditating. I would slow down a little bit. I would do something different, basically. I wouldn't study science. It would just be over for me. Science would be boring again, suddenly, for the first time in my life. So,
well, why would be doing those activities instead of the activities you did today be bad?
They wouldn't be bad. No, they wouldn't be bad. Okay. I just have more time for them, Like one of my thoughts is that if I get a terminal diagnosis of cancer, I'm going to go start reading all the Stephen King books that I missed. And I'm going to read Peter F. Hamilton's Reality Dysfunction over. And I'm going to read nonfiction, right? If I know that I'm not going to get to the bottom of this molecular biology thing, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I would change my life, and I think I would find meaning in that. I don't think I would be any less positive, if at all, if somebody pulled that rug out from underneath me. If they could convince me of this God idea, I would just pour myself into religion, and I'd be a real pain in the ass.
Would you prefer to know? Would you prefer your assessment of this situation be as accurate as possible, or would you prefer to not know?
I prefer to know. I would prefer to know. Like, if something mind-blowing came on and changed my mind entirely, I would welcome that. I'd open my door to that, because that would be an amazing experience by itself, to completely shift, right? And I think that would be kind of cool in a way. And then not only that, but my YouTube numbers would go way the hell up if I converted. I mean, if I converted, I could have 100,000 subscribers in 2 weeks, or maybe a few months, Yeah.
Well, we've been going a little while, and
that's fine.
I try to stay on track with time. But do you have anything else you want to say about it, or do you have any questions for me? Like, you can give me some feedback on how you think the process is. Another thing I've been trying to get people to do is, let's pretend that you don't know the term street epistemology.
Yeah.
Using 1 to 3 words, how would you describe this process? What would you name it?
Getting me to think.
Okay. Like thought provocation, maybe?
Thought provocation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I believe more in evolution than when we started. I think the number's gone up a little bit.
Hey, so you shifted.
A little bit, yeah.
Shifted.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, hey, that's, I like to see a shift either way, because that means that, for lack of other words, you have more accurately calibrated your confidence in this. And this is kind of an interesting topic on its own, because there's new ideas happening about the use of the confidence scale and the lack of relevance confidence is in epistemology in general. And so that's an interesting thing. We can talk about that whenever you'd like.
There's one other thing that has shifted, and that is I feel more like it would be okay if the rug was pulled out from under me. I'm more okay with it. The idea of, all of this is, we're wrong. We're just wrong. I think I'd be okay with that too. So, and I think when we started out, I said something like life wouldn't have meaning.
And that kind of got me concerned, because it's like, there's this kind of ethical consideration that we have to keep in mind, where it's like,
I know,
what's going to happen to this guy if, but I think most people are more resilient than we give them credit for when it comes to that kind of thing. So that's another topic we can hop on.
So my brother-in-law, when I was a teenager, was really important in my life. He's kind of like my second dad. He was older than me, and he and I would argue about religion all the time, about God, right? The whole time I was like from 13 on up, right? And one time when I was, I don't know, 14, 15, maybe 15, 16, we were out in the garage, and I backed him into a corner, and he stopped, and his shoulders went down, and he said, I don't know. And I felt horrible. I felt horrible, because suddenly it was almost like I broke him. And so that is the ethical consideration for all of this. We wouldn't want to do that. I didn't want to win that fight, right? I just love the fight.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting some really good feedback from you, and it sounds like you would want to be the open mind that you want to see others to have, right? Like, you've done all the studying, you're really confident in this, but it sounds like you would, first of all, you'd want to know if you're wrong,
right?
Which that's not everybody is like that. Your behavior would change if you found out, that this was not the case, which means that it's not just a benign thing that you've got. So that's cool. I thought that was
and I think the thing about we'd be okay anyway. I mean, if you can have faith that even if all of your beliefs fell down and shattered tomorrow, that you'd still be okay, I think is really important for everybody. And that would be incentive to check your reasoning all the time, right? Because that you don't have any, your life isn't invested in being right about what you think right now, right? And I think that's a real powerful, that is a powerful bit of faith for all of us to have, that we'd be okay either way. So anyway, does that make sense?
Yeah. And
okay,
I haven't really thought too much about people being more comfortable in the imaginary scenario that they're wrong. I like that.
Okay, so we can end that part. Do you want to talk about further subjects, or epistemology, or street epistemology, or
you got me till 3, so whatever
I got you till 3. we could invite people in that might get a little, I don't know. We don't want to make it an evolution discussion, but
Yeah,
I am open. I am
that
open at any time to talk about evolution though.
that kind of hits on the goal of the process though. Like it's less, and I don't know how this went for you, but for me, I try to focus less on what the claim is,
Right.
and more on why you're convinced your reasoning supports where you're at on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To the
Yeah.
point where sometimes I do it where I have them write down the claim on a piece of paper and not reveal it to me, and
Yeah.
try to go through the same process without even knowing what the claim is, so that I can take my bias out of the questioning. Because
Yeah.
if I have an opinion on the topic, that might color the way that my
Right.
questions come, right? And
Yeah.
so there had been this criticism of street epistemology where it's like, where you're just trying to manipulate people, or you're just trying to take away their beliefs. And it's like, well, I hear that, and I can understand how it could come across that way, especially if someone shares the same beliefs as you that are really important
Yeah.
to you. However, if I don't know what the claim is, and I focus on mostly the epistemology and building and maintaining rapport and all that too, uh, I think that it's a more pure version of the process.
Yeah.
It's not very entertaining, like it doesn't land very well like on a YouTube video, but
Yeah.
I think if everyone that's participating in it understands why it's being done that way, I think you can always tell the the goals people have when they do street epistemology by their relationship with the hidden claim method.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I don't know. I think this is really important for our politics too, and our ideas about culture and things that are changing, like LGBTQ. It's very important to kind of dig in and figure out what we really believe about all this. And and I'm such a goddamn liberal right now, and such an anti-Trumper that every now and then I wonder, what if what he's doing is really good for the country?
mm-hmm.
What if it turns out that that's the case, right? And even though we hate him and all this seems crazy and it seems un-American, what if it turns out better, this way? We got to think about all that stuff and think very carefully about our positions. And there's so much, that we got to keep looking at, because we could be wrong.
Yeah.
Could be wrong about a lot of shit.
That's another residual positive effect, I think, from doing this tour, is helping people in different communities have a better grasp on not necessarily what their beliefs are, but how they're supporting them. And a lot of people apparently don't really put a lot of effort in understanding. And a lot of that can like bleed over into other conclusions that they're walking around with, and the way that they behave and the way that they vote, like kind of like what you mentioned, that's why it matters. People act on what they believe, and their behavior affects the world outside of their own mind, and that's where the rest of us live. And so that's why it's important. It affects us, what other people believe. It's like cliche, just let people believe what they want. Sure, I mean, everybody has the right to believe whatever they're convinced is true, but your beliefs affect me and the people I love. And so that's why it's important to consider this stuff.
I've talked about this before, but I was a computer consultant for like 40 some years, and I made a butt ton of money, and I was paying a butt ton of taxes. and I started listening to Rush Limbaugh back in the I think in the late 80s, maybe the early 90s. I can't remember when he was popular, but I was like, I would listen to him constantly, and I was like, immigration, goddamn those immigrants, you know. And if I'd see a sign that had Spanish on it along with English, I was threatened. So I was and I voted Republican. I voted for Bush in 2000. And so I had this conservative mindset, right? And I was I didn't have the stupid ideas about LGBTQ, but I had all of the other immigration fear and all that bullshit. And looking back over that for the immigration incident, I was afraid of something. I was afraid that something was being taken from us Merkins. You know, us Merkins were losing our cultural focus, and we were losing our jobs, and we were losing our money, and I was losing my money and all that. And it was mostly emotionally based.
Yeah.
It wasn't based on any. And then I would listen to these talking heads on AM radio, and they would just find all the things that would feed into that and piss me off more, you know, like they'd find these little one-off incidents. I'd be like, yeah, see, that happened. And all that stuff. And it was, and then when I came away from that, like, okay, there was one thing I remember very clearly. It's like national monuments, right? When they started tearing down the Southern generals and the monuments and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's, you know, that's art and that's history and that's culture, and they shouldn't tear those down. And then one day I thought, when was the last fucking time I went out and looked at one of those monuments, right? When was the last time I had anything to do with one of those monuments? And all of a sudden, it just fell away from me. It's like, okay, if it offends you, rip it down. I don't really give a shit, because I don't care, because I have no dog in that game, right? Or in that race. I just it just fell down, and every single thing like that I examined from that conservative mindset ended up being about fear, about some attitude that was totally unjustified, mostly fear. It was fear of change, I think, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fear
And
can
that
be
was
a very motivating. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got Scott here. He's my co-host.
Hey, Scott.
Hello.
And yeah, so you got questions there? Says Scott. Maybe tell them your background a little bit, Scott.
Well, let's see. I was a Christian. Well, I was born and raised in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Went to high school in Central Arkansas. Graduated college. During that time, off and on, I became a fundamentalist Baptist. First, it was missionary Baptist, the ones that believe they're the one true religion. Literally, they do. And then became a Southern Baptist. But I was a Christian for about 30 some odd years. And then about 2008, 2009, I became an atheist, simply because the Christian view of the world just, to me, was not reality. And I just got a better sense of reality and, what's the word? Cohesiveness between what I know and the way the world's working, through things like science, economics, psychology, sociology. Those were the things that seemed to explain the world better. And so I became an atheist about that time. And but during my life as a Christian, I was a ordained preacher, went to seminary, graduated, and all that. I even pastored a couple of churches, not for very long, but anyway, that's where I'm at today. Is I'm a skeptic, an atheist, and I guess that's about all I should say for now. I did not have a life story prepared to tell.
Yeah. Okay.
It's quite a journey, though.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been an atheist all my life. Yeah. So I've been an atheist all my life. So Scott and I are, from two different kind of worlds.
Yeah, I became a Christian in the evangelical Southern Baptist sense, fundamentalist. About age 14, I was in my mid 40s, I think, when I became an atheist. That puts me around about 61 right now. So that's time-wise. That's where it came out.
Yeah.
Good comment.
Quite a journey. It reminds me, I've got a link in the description that I gave Mike
Yep.
for the Clergy Project, and that is basically like an anonymous support group for people that are in the clergy that are, figuring out that their beliefs are changing, and it's for a safe place for somebody to land if they're in that situation. If basically their livelihood is dependent on their beliefs and they're losing those, that can be a really tough thing. And I don't know if you went through that, but there is a link down there for the Clergy Project.
Recovery from
Well,
religion.
I had not pastored a church for quite a while after, until I became an atheist. So there was like quite a number of years, and I think I became an atheist for the Clergy Project. So the Clergy Project really isn't applicable to me anymore, other than maybe maybe recovering from religion if I had any leftover issues or whatever, but I haven't really felt the need for those kinds of services.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Clergy Project, the Secular Therapy Project, and Recovering from Religion are all in the description. I just put them in chat too. So
great. Yeah, if anybody else is in that kind of situation, that's some resources for them.
Effects of stimulus. Okay, Austin is going to college here. So, Austin, we should talk about evolution sometime. See why you believe in this bullshit. Anyway,
what's the running definition for atheist in this channel?
Well, it just varies all over the place. A lot of different ones. Basically, people that are not convinced that there is a God, like a Christian God. For me, my atheism, I break out in atheism when I'm next to a believer. So without somebody believing in something, I'm not an atheist. So when I shut the screen off here, I'm just Mike, right? But then if you have a belief that I disagree, that I don't believe in, then I'm an atheist. If you believe in some God. But gotcha. I've been in 12-step programs all my life, or since 24. And we use the word God all the time. And I use the word God all the time when I talk at meetings. And so I have my own kind of like conception of God as this beautiful, complex, natural universe, right? And about that, I'm not an atheist. So I'm not an atheist when I'm alone. So anyway.
Interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think so. I'll have to.
Yeah. But, the people here that come here, they vary from, agnostic, DeFreak is a real believer, and he's a pain in our ass. He's always
you always need some pushback. I think that's healthy.
I hope. Yeah, I like it. We don't get enough, so I gotta thank him for showing up. So even though he gets timed out occasionally, I think.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I don't know. Maybe you can use some of these techniques when you have folks on that you have a disagreement.
Yeah. So everybody should subscribe to your channel and get behind what you're doing. I think what you're doing is amazing. You travel around the country, right? Like, are you going to do it in San Francisco? You're going to do street epistemology there?
Yep, that is my next stop on the tour.
Okay.
I try to be in the part of the country where the weather is best at different times of the seasons. So
yeah.
Springtime, I spent a lot of time in the Southwest, and then summertime, I'm generally on the West Coast, Northwest, Northern states. And then like September, when school starts getting started on college campuses, I like to be kind of in the Great Lakes region, Ohio, all that, and then spend time in the fall on the East Coast, and then spend a lot of time in Florida in the wintertime.
Okay.
So just basically chasing the good weather and meeting up with folks in those areas that want to go out and try to do SE. So if you're in the United States, I have considered going up to Canada, because there's a few folks I know up there that live there. I haven't been up there yet for this. But yeah, if you're around and you want to go out and try it, yeah, I'd be down to meet up with you.
Yeah. It's an interesting comment. Atheists are the ones that assert that they don't know, while we keep telling you that we do know. So he's a Christian, I believe, the freak. Is that correct, Scott? Is that what you get out of him?
A Gnostic theist?
I've really never know what the freak is getting at, but
yeah,
it sounds like you say that. Atheists say they don't know about God. No, we say there's no evidence of a God. I don't know whether there's a God or not. I've not seen any evidence. You say what you say strongly, and you think you have a strong position, and that's not true. So
yeah, he thinks knowing it's a stronger position than not knowing.
Yeah, most of theist claims of knowledge is just bloviation, just bloviating their assertions all over the place. So, yeah, basically, you say something.
What makes the position strong?
What's that?
That's a good question.
What makes a position strong? Or what?
He seems to be
claiming than another.
He seems to be claiming that the fact that he does know, that he is certain, that makes it stronger than our I don't know. I don't know what came before the Big Bang, quote unquote, that sort of thing. He seems to think that knowing something, at least, you can correct me, DeFreak, if I'm wrong, but the way you followed that, you said atheists are the ones that assert they don't know, while we keep telling you that we do know, him being the Christians, and he says, which is the stronger position, which kind of implies that he thinks is the stronger.
You say you know, why should we believe you know? I mean, that's an assertion too.
Yeah.
I know. Why don't you believe me? Well, because you have to be believable.
Why?
You have a position that's believable.
Believe it?
Sorry, I don't mean to get animated.
I wish they'd concentrate more on telling us why they believe in what they believe than trying to pick on our beliefs or lack of belief, or whatever. I don't know.
It sounds like if you claim to know it, that's a stronger position than claiming not to know it.
I guess so, yeah.
Maybe they think that they're stronger people because they take a position of positive knowledge where we go, I don't know, there's no evidence. Maybe they think it shows stronger character, which is just a failed view of what a person's character is.
How does that affect whether the claim is true or not?
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Whether someone claims to know it or not, does that have any bearing on whether the claim is actually true? Like, I'd be interested in finding reliable ways to tell if it's true, not relying on how much someone claims it to be true.
Yeah. Yeah, it only makes a difference if you're bigger and stronger, right? If you're big, strong, and certain, everybody got to believe it like me.
Does it
sort of thing.
Might makes right?
Might makes right, yeah. Or in DeFreak's case, certainty makes right somehow. He's so certain.
Oh, okay.
It's like the bandwagon fallacy with arms, with guns or something.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when you're faced with something and you believe you know the answer to it, right? That comes with a certain, I don't know if it's dopamine or a certain peace or emotional well-being when you know that you have the answer to something. Like if you hear a noise in the house and you don't know what it is, you're kind of upset, and then you find out it was a cat knocked over a bookshelf, and then you say, "Oh yeah, now you feel better." So being certain of something, they call that faith, I think. And being certain has this feeling of being emotionally satisfied.
Yeah.
That you know what's going on. And it's kind of how we're built. We're built to do that. So to feel upset until we don't know.
Yeah, and I
or
think
we know.
that's a red flag when you're trying to figure out if something's true, is to understand your emotional attachment to it and how that's kind of like what we talked a little bit about. You're invested in it,
Right.
and how does that affect your relationship to whether it being true or not is important.
Yeah. I think that's how we judge series like Game of Thrones, based on how good the story is, right? How satisfying the story is, how many things make sense and seem right. And if you watch a series where they do stupid shit all the time and it doesn't make any sense, or there's a plot hole, you're upset. You just shut it off, watch something else. So we like good stories, we humans.
Yeah.
Let's see. Fully explain germination and you win? What are you talking about? Is he talking about evolution? Germination in plants? I don't know. Anyway.
It sounds like there's some script about seeds and plants, and then he feels spiritual, so he's going to say, see if you can explain germination, and you win. But no, what you win when you explain germination is a biology degree, not a philosophical argument.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you win a biology degree.
Next topic.
Next topic.
Does being rational require having to be able to have a full explanation of it?
Well, I think
I don't know.
I think a realistic point of view, I guess, for lack of a better word, my internal thesaurus is just shot today after dealing with 3 very young kids. But being able to say, okay, my knowledge stops here. I can explain this. I'm not sure about that. And I can explain this. It might be a little off, but correction. That's the more realistic and nuanced attitude towards the world. So fully explain something, you can't fully explain something. And God has never given a full explanation throughout all the scriptures of all the religions in all the world. So once again, the freak is just spouting deepities, if they're even that. I don't think they're deep enough to be a deepity. But I'm probably not doing
name himself the
very
freak.
well, but that's my impression of what we're hearing.
Yeah. If you were appealing to something like rationality, you need to justify it. If you say you don't need to justify it, then a theist doesn't need to justify anything. Okay, so that's a presupper, Chase Haggard. It sounds a little presupp.
So your ability to justify things depends on other people saying, I don't know. I'm just going to back out of that. That's another silly statement. Another silly statement.
Yeah.
I don't want to respond to.
Well, you can give a really good explanation on something that isn't true, right? Like you can explain the Lord of the Rings pretty well, right? I gather.
Yep.
How does that affect whether the Lord of the Rings really happened or?
Right. Yeah, if the explanation makes sense, sort of thing. He's talking about appeal, like anytime you get together and you talk, you're assuming rationality and you're assuming logic and you're assuming the ability to reason between you. So you're just taking that as almost a brute force given, that sort of thing. But I can go further and explain rationality through biology and neuroscience. And I mean, if he's talking about how I justify it, well, I justify it as X, and I can go on for hours and hours about how I justify it. So I think he's saying that we can't justify it if we're atheists, but he can, and I disagree with that entirely. So I don't know. If you're
How did
appealing to something like rationality, you need to justify it. Who demands that?
well how does being able to justify one thing demonstrate something else necessarily?
Right. Yeah. I think the whole precept thing is you can justify it with the story of God and Christianity in the Bible, and that's how you justify rationality. That's how you justify morality. You justify good. It's like we have a story that fits, but Lord of the Rings is also another story. So I don't understand how it makes it true just because you have a story that asserts it. Right.
And that you can explain it fully.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a story too, and it's biology. So,
Yeah.
let's see. So anyway, Chase, I okay, cool. Then you're arbitrary since you don't need to justify your claims. Since I justify all the claims I make. What do you mean? What do you mean by justify? We can dig in and go back and justify that, and then justify whatever that's based on, and on and on and on. It's a conversation, right?
Well, what is required for a sufficient justification?
Yeah. Yeah. What justifies it? What do you need?
Yeah. What's the criteria that's required for a justification to be sufficient?
I guess ultimately my story in biology is just a story, and their story in Christianity is just a story. So we both have stories, and of course I can claim that mine is scientifically verified and that we can verify in a number of cross-referenced ways, right? And that would give me more strength in belief, right? Because I can cross-reference it a number of different ways. Whereas the Bible, I don't think they can cross-reference it in only one way. The Bible. So I that's one of the reasons why it doesn't appeal to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the testing aspect of it. Like,
Yeah.
it seems like, being able to test it and being able to tell when the test failed, like have an idea of what a failed test would look like. And just actually being willing to test it in the first place. There's a lot of people I've talked to that say that their claim, they're not willing to test it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of concerns me when you're not willing to test it, B, you wouldn't know what a failed test would look like. Those are kind of problematic in my mind. That's where I might go deep. Like, would you prefer we had a test? If there's not a failure component to the test, why is that a good test?
Yeah. Yep.
If you're
So I'm asking. Go ahead.
no, sorry, go for it.
I'm asking for your. I'm quoting Chris Haggard. I'm asking for your criteria and doing an internal critique. No, you aren't. If you want to biologically, if you want to biologically, then you can say somebody else's view, which is biologically determined, is as well is false. Yeah, you can. What I'm doing is I'm transcending and talking about the biology, right? So I'm coming up with a transcendent proof, biological proof about what it is to be right and what it is to be rational, that sort of thing. So I don't understand your criticism. Your criticism here, Chris, seems naive. I'm sorry. Not an internal critique. Because I kind of explain, I explain knowledge as fit to the environment, like an organism fits its environment, and the environment shapes the organism, and that's what knowledge is at a very, very simple level. So,
Is this kind of close to the puddle effect, where the puddle thinks that the hole was made perfectly for the puddle, but it's actually the other way around?
yeah, kind of. Yeah, we sort of, but we fit our environment, and we humans have a lot more neurons, and we're able to cross-check things, right? We're able to rationalize, to think about things. You know, we see something, and we think about the fact that we see it, so we can go a little bit further, right? And that's what reason is, and that's all biological. But when it comes to knowledge, that's basically how an organism fits its environment. Like a very single-celled bacteria has knowledge of its environment, like the pH value that it's swimming toward, right? That's a very, very reductive idea of what knowledge is. And I start there, but then when we get to humans, because we have all this ability to not only see a thing, but to think we see a thing, right? To represent it in our brain and go on and on and on. And we do a pretty damn good job of building tools which kind of verifies that what we're seeing is actually there.
Like a model.
It's really
You build a
hard.
model.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to build a garage if your lumber isn't really there. You know, if there's we got it all wrong, right? We got it all wrong about reality. There's no such thing as boards. There's no such thing as concrete slabs. And yet we build a garage, right? So anyway, but that's some weird. I guess that would be my my transcendental argument for atheism. Sort of thing. I don't know. Anyway.
I have another thought experiment that I've been asking people to help me with. And it's basically like there's two questions. And the reason why I ask both questions is so that we can have a contrast. Because a lot of people think I'm asking a different question. And maybe you can help me word it, because it's kind of a mouthful. But basically, like, there's things in the world that you wish were different, would you say? Like, there are some things about our world that you would prefer to be a different way. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And so, what percentage of your assessments about the world would you prefer be accurate?
What percentage of my assessment of the world would I prefer to be accurate? 100.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. What percentage do you think are accurate?
70.
Okay. All right. Well, that was easy.
Was it? That's it.
Yeah. I mean, not okay. So why do you think somebody would not answer 100 to the first question, which is what percentage of your assessments of the world would you prefer to be accurate? Why would you think?
I don't know. Oh, they would want surprise in their life. They would want, unknown features, or they'd want to be surprised. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the desire to be surprised.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well,
So
part of the surprise is understanding the real thing, though, right? Like you have to have an accurate an
Right.
accurate assessment to get the surprise. Or am I thinking
Yeah.
about that right?
Yeah, I think so. You would want 100% knowledge, but you would never really want to get there because there would be no surprises left, right? But yet you're striving to get there. So
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and
this
I
is
think
kind of-
that's what makes me read in the morning, right? But if I knew all of molecular biology, I would be really depressed. If I knew it all, it's just nothing to read, right? Well, that would be like reaching the end of a really good series, It's like, oh shit, it's over,
Mm.
I don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it does. It does. For some reason, I don't understand why anybody would, if they're understanding the question accurately, the question that I'm actually asking, which I think
Yeah.
you understood it, I don't see how anybody could answer less than 100. And I've heard well, I wouldn't want to know if X, Y, Z. I would prefer not to know, or
yeah,
it would take too much energy to have 100% accuracy, and it's not worth spending that much energy to be 100%. Those are the kind of things that I've heard. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to know when I'm going to die.
You would want to know.
Exactly. I
You would
wouldn't. No.
You would not want to know.
No, not exactly. No, I want that to be a surprise. So,
Why is that?
Because then I'd sit around and think about nothing but. I'd become obsessed with it, right?
It'd always be on your mind.
Always be on my mind if I knew something that was pop. It's like when I know I got to go to the dentist. It's like shit. I wish I didn't know. Just surprise me. Just put me in the chair suddenly, and I'm there, right?
Yeah.
So there's that.
So the
you're gonna run it. Go ahead.
I was just clarifying. So the accuracy that you would want your model to be of our shared reality would be 100% if you had your preference.
Yeah. About what's going on right now in the world. What's true in the world. I would. My preference would be to be 100% accurate on that.
Mm-hmm. What if that caused you to be less happy or less comfortable?
I'd get over it. I don't know. I'd get over it. I think, I'd get over it. And it would make me unhappy to not know what the reality was, right? More so than having a bad reality presented to me. That something's like what I don't know what that would be. All my neighbors are serial killers. I know one is, but all of them, it's
yeah. Well, how much of your map are you open to being mistaken about?
How much of what?
How much of your map of reality are you open to being mistaken about?
All of it. All of it.
Why do you think that's important to have that mindset?
That all of it is open,
Yeah.
because I don't want to. I want to change all the time. I want to always be open to change. I want to be operated on by the world, which changes me. So I don't want to. I don't want to adopt something that's like a piece of steel, like rigid iron. Don't ever want to have that kind of a thing in my mind. I always want to have it be open to looking at it and picking at it. Change.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is from, that conservative mindset that I came from. I'm so glad that I changed. I would not have wanted that to be rigid. So I think it's very important. And I feel the same way today.
Cool.
That us liberals might be full of shit.
Well, I've been asking most of the questions.
Anyway, okay.
I think we have a little bit of time left. If you have any other questions for me, I don't want to monopolize
Yeah,
the question stage.
Yeah, what has been your experience with changing people's minds, or with people changing in front of you, or letting you know that you changed them? Is that you get a lot of that, or very little?
I don't have really reliable methods to find out right
Okay.
now.
Yeah, but does anybody write to you and tell you after the fact, or do you leave contact info?
Most of it is there's been shifting one way or the other, but not like a whole 180. And I don't really expect that. I don't think that that's how it works. Like, I'd like to think that if the interview was impactful enough, they'll think about it at their own pace, where they're not in front of cameras. They're not answering, these weird questions in front of their friends that they have to perform for. When they're in the shower, when they're alone and it comes up in their mind, that's kind of when that adjustment happens, I think. And I'm not really out there trying to change people's minds, so to speak, but just giving them an opportunity that if they feel like they need to, based on their own answers and to their own satisfaction, that they have an opportunity to do that. Because I don't know how often people give themselves or each other that opportunity to reconsider why are they holding this conclusion, and if those reasons are sufficient for holding that conclusion.
Yep. Yeah, one of the most interesting things that came of this that we're talking about is that, and I'm going to call it faith, basically the faith that we're going to be okay even if we don't, what we believe is not right? That that core, like when it comes to a devout Christian, right? They've got like this strong emotional feeling of I don't know, certainty or leaning back into the right thing, that they're right, that they've got it right, and they can just relax and lean into it, right? And that's called spirituality, and that's connected to faith. And for me, my whole life journey started with a religious experience at age 15. And it was, I was an atheist before, during, and after. But it was definitely what they call a religious experience, where the world is on fire for 3 days and suddenly everything makes sense and you can It's just like an unbelievable brain glitch is what it is. And I had absolute faith without knowing anything for certain. I just had absolute faith. And so one thing that believers in something have to understand is that you don't need it to be okay, to have that faith, to have that spirit, right? You don't have to believe in a religious dogma in order to be spiritual and have faith and fall into, that warm blanket of I'm okay, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, and it brings up one of the questions I like to ask when people give the reasons of like, I was rock bottom, and this X religion is what helped me, and if I didn't have that religion, I wouldn't have been helped, or I wouldn't find meaning, or whatever. And the question is something like, how do you suppose people that don't hold these beliefs make it? Like, how do they cope? How do you think that, how do you suppose they are able to manage and still have good lives or find meaning? And that can be a pretty powerful question for them, because it's, if they understand that it's possible to find meaning without these beliefs, then what does that say about how strong they should think that they're true?
I think a lot of believers think us atheists are running around with no meaning, that we're always in a constant state of angst, right? And for me, that couldn't be further from the truth. I have great faith.
Yeah.
So Deconverted Man has a... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't know if I asked that question with our session, but it was, how do people that believe in magic, like, you had said something like,
it would be boring.
It would be boring, yeah. And it's like, well, how do people that find meaning in magic, like, what happens with them? How does that work? And you don't have to answer that now. It's just it popped up when we were talking about this. Like, how do other people that don't believe this find meaning?
Yeah, let me think about that one. So, yeah. Okay, I can comment on it, but Deconverted Man has a question for you. Deconverted Man is he's absolutely batshit crazy, but we love him on the channel. He's got a channel called Deconverted Man. Well,
I like
no,
it.
he just has a wonderful personality, and he really puts it out there, and he has great content. He's definitely worth subscribing to. Answer for Mr. Street Epistemologist. What conversation have you had that changed your mind about some topic?
I don't know if changing my mind I would go that far, but I have shifted. As far as my level of certainty in something. I think guns was one of the topics that I shifted on.
Oh, which way?
Well, I used to be like completely against guns, like across the board. Like, there's no reason anybody would need a gun. And I shifted on that. I understand now that it would be reasonable in some cases. So that might be an example of where I shifted on something because of a conversation that I had with someone.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm a liberal gun nut.
Yeah.
Well, I grew up I grew up in a farming community, right, where we used to take our rifles to school in the 1960s and put them in a locker and then go hunting after school. I mean, can you imagine that happening today?
No.
Like,
No,
yeah,
I cannot.
it'd be a whole different thing. But I mean, there was that kind of trust of guns back, in the community where I grew up.
Yeah.
And it was a very different environment, different culture. So,
yeah, it's one of those issues where you don't always know where someone's going to stand just by how they vote for president.
Right. Yeah. But for me, it's like, if you don't have a gun, what the hell are you going to do if you have a rabid skunk in the yard? Goddamn, you're screwed, right? And we did have a rabid skunk in the yard, and I did shoot it when I was a kid. Yeah.
Did you?
Anyway.
Oh, that sounds like
the goddamn thing attacked me when I went out to get ice cream. We had this meat house where we kept all the cold stuff, and I walked out and it was under this bench, and it just. Oh, is that your dog, Scott? And it actually came out and just started snarling at me and chasing me. And I ran in the house, got a shotgun, and killed it. So that's a real story. Anyway.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. Anyway. So let's see. No, I don't think. Oh, a deconverted man had something here. Give guns, wait for it, a shot. I don't know what he.
I love the pun.
His mind is such an incredible place. He comes up with this lobster religion, and he's written a number of books on it. Or a couple of wonderful books you can find on Amazon under the author Dan Green. And he's got a couple good books. One is The Lobster, which really gets along with Jordan Peterson well over this lobster thing.
Oh,
not really.
Well, I'll just say, yeah, I had to bite the bullet and shift my positions on guns a little bit.
Yeah. My sons are.
I don't want anybody
really
get triggered here, just so you know.
Yeah, my sons are really anti-gun, even though they grew up with them, and I scared the shit out of them when they were young, to teach them the power of the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you a story about our early psychedelic days in the 60s. Me and my friend, we did acid, and we decided to take the shotgun down to the river and fire it while on acid, right, while higher than hell. So we took the shotgun down, a 20 gauge shotgun down to the river, and we leaned it over and after maybe 5 minutes of deliberation, and like, okay, Mac, you be over there, you stand behind me. Okay, I'm going to pull the trigger now. And it's like, and then we shot it, and this just like incredible fucking psychedelic explosion blew out of this shotgun, and we could see like tracers, and then on the way back, I cracked the shotgun open and I carried it, but I made him carry the shells in a separate pocket. So the shells would be nowhere near the gun. Because we were so scared of that gun. It's like we don't ever want to see that shit again. Yeah, it was pretty incredible. Anyway.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, we were about, 19, I think, when we did that little experiment. That was incredible. We always, it's like, okay, this is an unbelievable experience like Disneyland. What would it be like if we did acid? And we go ahead and do that. Yeah. Love the 60s, 70s. Anyway. Okay. Well, you got any other?
Yeah. No, just check out the info in the description. There's
lots of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's ways to find out, about the tour. There's ways to find out about the free course that the nonprofit is writing. There's ways to donate. There's ways to get a hold of me if you want to try going out and doing street epistemology in your neighborhood. So check all that stuff out. And I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. I would do it, but I'd want a bulletproof vest. So I don't know. It takes a little bravery to do this. It takes a lot of bravery.
It just takes money. It just takes money to get a bulletproof vest, you know.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the gas money, but you know, whatever it takes, I guess.
But no, it's brave and it's a wonderful endeavor, and I think it's really useful. And the more people you can touch with, if you can light a little match, like a little fire, you know, and get people thinking about what they think and why they think it, that will have a tremendous blossoming effect on everybody that they know afterwards. So it's a real wonderful thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Appreciate
it. Thanks for saying that. And like I said, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for being interested. Maybe we can do another session sometime.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. There are a few more things, you know, some political things we could get into that.
Sure.
I'm interested in. Okay.
And I guess I have one more question. And so based on our interview, this is an easy one. Based on our interview, can you tell where I am on the claim? Your claim. Like, do you have any idea of where I stand on based on the interview, like where I stand on your claim? Okay.
No, I know more about you from the description that you sent me about the things that you sent me than I do from just talking to you. So yeah. I mean, that kind of tells a story about religion, but on evolution, I don't still know, you know, how convinced you are, but yeah.
Well, that's a good grade for me, because that means
you did a good job. Yeah.
That I didn't inject my bias into the questioning. And I think it's important, and I'll leave everyone with this, like it's not so much about what the belief is, but the sufficiency of the methods they're using to support their level of certainty in their conclusion, because that can bleed into other things that they believe instead of just focusing on that one thing. A criticism I might give with street epistemology is that it's too claim centric. Like, people are focusing on the claim too much, on the what do you believe and why. Like, and again, my everybody's different, everybody's got different goals. My expression is like, I'm not so focused on what the claim is, why you believe it, but why you're convinced those methods of finding out and the sufficiency of those reasons, why you're convinced those are sufficient enough to your own satisfaction to be where you're at as far as the conclusion goes. So
Leo came in late. Is this guy a theist, creationist, atheist? We don't know. We're not supposed to know, right? Go read the.
You can ask me. You can ask me anything you want. I'm not afraid to answer questions. I think it's funny though that a lot of times, you know, people are so involved in the interview where, you know, you leave them and they're kind of contemplating things, and they're kind of distracted by that instead of asking me where I'm at and stuff. So that's kind of a good sign.
Well, you know, when you have a therapist, you don't ask the therapist about his personal love life, right? So it's about you, right? It's about you, not the therapist, right? So you're the therapist. So
we're on the same team.
So we gotta
towards a goal of you having a better grasp on the methods that you're using and why you're convinced those are good methods.
Yeah, so Leo says, I don't respect street epistemology, and I heard some other pushback on it just recently too. I can't remember who. I respect the people, but not the method. Mike should host us together and title it Street Epistemology versus Actual Philosopher. But I don't know. Yeah, that sounds incredible.
That would be fun.
But Leo can be a little abrasive. Is that fair, Leo? Did I say something fair about you? Him and I go at it over scientism because I'm a scientist, and I also believe in the reality of mathematics and all that stuff. So, and he can be a little abrasive with me. But anyway, yeah, well, that might be of interest. Maybe all of his contact information is there, Leo. So there you got it.
Yeah,
so it's in my description. Read my damn description, people. Okay. Anything, Scott? You got anything, Scott?
Well, the only thing I had was a question from earlier, and if it takes too long to answer or whatever, did y'all cover,
Okay.
and I know this is going to sound silly, the meaning of the word meaning? Because like when we were asking questions about, do atheists have meaning? What gives you meaning in your life? Are you talking about a sense of connection with people, a sense that most of your ideas are true, that you're going to go to heaven? What does it mean to ask somebody about their meaning? Because I think maybe people come at it from different directions, and you could ask me, where do you find meaning in your life? And it's totally different, from what I think is being answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question.
We don't even have to answer that question, but I just wonder sometimes what people expect when they say atheists can't have meaning in their life, or my God.
For me, it's entirely the health and well-being of my digestive system. So it's my gut. That's meaning. My gut. How I feel.
Yeah. What does meaning look like?
Yeah. I think it's a feeling more than anything else. Meaning. I don't know.
Now, okay, so Icarus seems to be accusing me of being going Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Okay, Icarus.
Oh my God.
I don't know if I
mean?
need to get the gloves out or not about that. I don't know if I like being
What do you
compared
mean
to
by
Jordan.
what? What do you mean?
What do you mean
by?
Oh, if you want to have a good time, go to ChatGPT or one of the AI bots and tell it to imitate Jordan Peterson saying something simple. It is fucking awesome. I mean, it's so funny. It does such a good job of doing Jordan Peterson. So for a guy that's supposedly so brilliant, why is AI so goddamn good at parodying you and sounding just like him?
Yeah.
At the same time that you're laughing at them, it's amazing.
That's great. I think I'm going to do that for the rest of the day.
Do that for the rest of the day. Yeah.
Okay, so
that'll give me meaning.
Here's one definition. Meaning is a direct intent or interpretation. So, Jesus has given me direct intent and interpretation in my life. I don't know how sufficient that is, but yeah. So you're talking about a lens for interpreting life through. Well, that's just a worldview, and apparently everybody's got one. So I don't know that. I don't know that covers it.
I see it differently. What I think that's defining is a different use for the word meaning. Like, what is the meaning of chair? Well, it's an interpretation for a piece of furniture that you sit on.
Right.
But maybe I'm off.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those words that has lots of meanings in the dictionary, and it sounded like they picked one of the other ones or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I was thinking of this stoner kid. What's it all mean, man?
Yeah.
It's like, what's it mean?
Yeah.
And it sort of gets deepity, right? You get into the deepity.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hope, meaning, and hope, meaning, and purpose all kind of walk hand in hand, I think, with that type of meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're mostly driven by these emotions, right? And so it's emotional. It's more from the gut, from our being a body in the world, and being a complete body in the world. And also that gets in the way of reasoning, of rationality when we do attempt to reason, or when we need to employ reason and rationality to a problem, oftentimes our body-centric gut emotions get in the way. But for the most part in your life, that is the most important thing you do, right? You're a living being, a thriving, blossoming, changing living being. But sometimes you get dumb.
Yeah, it seems
Sometimes
like
you do dumb things.
Yeah, it's what is driving us, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. Okay, we're at 3 hours, or 2 hours. So
Cool.
and
Thanks again.
Um,
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, and read the description. There's a lot of links in there, and do subscribe to Sound Epistemology. So, anyway, okay, ready to go dead, go dark.
Go for it.
Okay, goodbye, crew world, is what I got to say. Bye.
Goodbye.